So I recently learned about Flesh and Blood's Collector's Week, which I think was just these past few days, and I thought I'd get in on the action and show off my favorite deck, my favorite Blinged-Out deck, while doing a deck tag as well, because apparently I am the #1 -IO player from Pro Tour Singapore. So in today's video, I am going to be showing off my fully Blinged-Out -IO deck. This one. It's a deck that I really enjoy playing, and it brings me a lot of joy just seeing the cards as well, because I love the mech cards in foil. So it's going to be a deep dive into the hero, into the deck tag, you know, the card choices, and of course the sideboard plans going into Pro Tour Singapore, and the changes coming out of that tournament and moving forward with the deck. But first, seeing as it's Collector's Week, I have to show off this uncut sheet of Teklo-Vossen Macropotent Marvel, which is unfortunately quite unplayable, but one day when it's playable, I will be playing Teklo-Vossen. So to begin, let's just talk about -IO and the signature weapon, both of which are signed by Sam Young in cold foil. This was amazing. This was actually a gift given to me by one of the LGSs in Singapore, Duke's Kingdom, shout out to them. And yeah, met Sam Young at Pro Tour Singapore, got these signed. And -IO, basically, you want to try and play as a 5 intellect hero as much as possible. You want to try and find items off the top. You can always look at the top card, so make sure you check in between boosting, in between drawing cards. And if you can play an item off the top every turn, then you are doing very well. Because that basically means you get extra value off the top of your deck, which is an extra card basically that you get to play. And don't forget, all these items trigger Symbiosis Shot. This is the weapon that I play into most of the matchups because it just converts items into more damage. So for example, your boom grenades, they threaten 4 or 3 damage plus another 2 from the Symbiosis Shot. So ideally, while you are playing, you are trying to change the top card as much as possible of your deck. That's why boost is really good. And you always want to try and have an extra resource available in order to play the item off the top, because it's horrible if like you just play out all your cards and you have no resources left and you boost for the last time and then there's an item on the top but you can't pay for it. As for the other pieces of equipment in the deck, I do have the Marvel Hanabi Blaster, also signed by Joseph Chu, and this comes in really handy in the fatigue matchups where they're just blocking and blocking and blocking, and you can chain 3 boost cards together, you know, get in the 5 damage. Ideally, you always want to shoot the blaster and make sure you get through all 5 damage. And it also comes in handy at the end of the game when you're trying to close the game, because it has overpower. So what I like to do when I'm playing a Hanabi Blaster plan is try and stack 3 or 4 counters and sending back to back, you know, triple boost turns into a Hanabi Blaster. That kind of thing. It's kind of like a mini Max V in that sense. Besides that, other hit pieces, Visiatronic, just for AB2. This is a cold foil that I picked up at Pro Tour SG, and I did not play with it at all because I didn't face any Kanos. And I have a Crown of Providence. This is just an amazing card in DO because you always know what you're going to draw off the top. And sometimes, for example, if you just need a pitch card, right? Or you need to filter the top card of your deck, dig for an item, this helps so much. If you can use your crown to guarantee that next turn you send a Max V, for example, then that is so much value, either just by finding a 0 cost boost off the top or finding your pitch card off the top. Crown of Providence, just broken actually in DO. And this is a cold foil also that I picked up at Pro Tour SG. So very nice. Chess pieces. We have the Teklo Foundry Heart. This is the only chess piece you need or you want. And this is another cold foil that I picked up at Pro Tour SG. That was a lot of money I spent at Pro Tour SG, actually. And yes, Teklo Heart blocks for 2, Battle Worn, so blocks for 3. This helps you filter the top card of your deck. This helps you run your hands off a yellow pitch because it basically turns it into a blue pitch. And this turns your blue pitch into a Max V turn off of, you know, for 3-4 cards. You can just pitch a blue and go 1 cost, 0 cost, Max V, that kind of thing. Arm piece, we have Braces of Belief. This is something that, you know, people used to run in Dio, but now most of the lists I see, they're running Goliath Gauntlet. And I just like this a lot now because Gravy is in the meta. It helps turn 1 for 4s into 6 power attacks to clear chumps. It helps to turn your 0 for 3s into 0 for 5s, which is a much harder number to block. And you always know that you always use this when there's a red card on top, so that you always get the +2 value. It is quite bad if you kind of need to break the chain in between for something like a Pulse Wave Harpoon, or if you want to send a heist but the top card isn't red. So there are downsides to this Braces of Belief, but I do think that overall it's just more flexible than Goliath Gauntlet. So I like this a lot. Besides that, we have the new High Seas Cogworks Tinkerings, and this card in conjunction with Adaptive Plating, both of which are CF by the way, very nice stuff. Blocks for 5. So what happens is you block with both of these equipment. This triggers, you get a golden cog, which also triggers Symbiosis Shot by the way. You get 2 value off of that as well. And then you galvanize it to Adaptive Plating. So altogether this blocks for 5. This comes in the aggro races where you want to preserve your life, get in a massive amount of block value. It's just amazing to preserve your life total. And finally, we have a cold foil Achilles Accelerator. Another thing that I picked up at Pro Tour SG. So basically most of this deck was picked up most of this equipment suite was picked up at Pro Tour Singapore. So yes, Achilles Accelerator. Arcane Barrier 1, so it always comes into Rune Blades and Kano Wizards. But it's also part of this aggressive package. Like I would say, you have this defensive package, you put this in the arm slot and the leg slot. And this is the aggressive package. You have the arms and legs for the aggressive package. This helps you get in 2 points of extra damage to push through a boom grenade. This action point helps you to either fire your gun one more time or just draw off a Cerebellum when you don't have the item to crank off the top for the extra action point. And using this effectively, well, can just get you so much more value than what's on the cards, because if you have 1 boom grenade, it pushes through that extra damage. If you have 2 boom grenades, it pushes through even more damage. So yes, very aggressive package. Play this into decks like Earth decks, even Gravy Bones, I play this. And then this loadout is more for the aggressive matchups, the Mirrors, the Syndras, the decks that you need to preserve life total, like Assassins as well. This comes in to every matchup. This comes into almost every matchup. This is for AB, for Kano, and Hanabi Blaster. During my Pro Tour run, I faced 2 Verdances and I closed the game out using Hanabi Blasters. So one other thing I forgot to mention about Hanabi Blaster is because you don't really need the extra action point when you crank items off the top. So Hanabi Blaster is a way for you to actually save cards in deck and ensure that your items stay around a bit longer, because you don't really have an incentive to crank the items when you're playing Hanabi Blaster, unlike Symbiosis Shot, where getting that extra action point means that you can shoot the gun an additional time. So with Hanabi Blaster, you're just trying to play 3 boost cards. You don't have to boost 3 times, you just play 3 boost cards, and then you get a counter on this, and then after that, you try and go for a bigger turn in between smaller turns. Oh, and I also forgot, another thing you can do is, instead of those 2 pairings I talked about, you can just run Adaptive Plating in the leg slot and Braces of Belief in the arm slot if you're trying to push through damage but you also need a bit of block. Or you can just do Adaptive Plating in the arm slot and Achilles in the leg slot for the action point. So it's very flexible, this kind of setup. I do like this setup into Rune Blades, into things you just need 1 AB. Like for example, into Vincent, you can run this, you can run this. It really depends on your game plan. And this is also a good loadout for matchups like Auxilio, where you do want to block a bit. You also need the AB, but you can also push through damage with the Achilles Accelerator, that kind of thing. Really depends what you are comfortable with. So I've broken down the deck like this. This is the entire main 60. I do like to have a main 60 because I like to be as consistent as possible in terms of finding my power cards in the deck. And running more than 60 means you end up not seeing those power cards as soon as you can, right? First up, on this top row here, we have items. So 3 cerebellums, and these are all signed by the artist in RF. So his signature is amazing. I went to Pro Tour London, I met him there. Marius Genzel signature. He customized this really just to fit in with the artwork. And of course the playmat is from him as well. And then we have 3 Teklo cores, also signed by Nathaniel Himawan at Pro Tour Singapore. This is another amazing custom signature. He does this for all his arts, I guess. You can kind of choose a style to fit the card. And then we have 6 boom grenades, 3 yellow, which are RF, and then 3 red, which are in CF. I hope they make the CF ones in yellow as well. 3 backup protocols. I think having these 3 backup protocols, they come into most of the matchups, not all the matchups, but they're just really flexible, just as additional boost card or additional item off the top. It's really, really useful to have a backup protocol, especially to bring back a Max V. And then the 2 power cards, we have Spark of Genius and Max V. These are most often the cards that you are digging for outside of items. And even sometimes if I have tempo and I'm boosting and they're blocking and I've already taken like 2 or 3 cards and I see one of these cards off the top, I might not boost it away. I might just decide to end the turn with the pistol shot, or if I have a cerebellum out, draw it and then hope that the next card is an item so that I can crank it off the top and get an action point back that way. But yes, if you go through a whole game and you play all 3 Sparks and all 3 Max Vs, you are probably winning that game. If you play 2 of each, you're still probably winning that game. And if you don't play any of these in the whole game, then you're probably going to lose that game, because it's so much value to play. Let's just talk about Spark for a while, right? Spark of Genius is a tutor, it's a dash specialization, and it's a tutor that essentially replaces itself if you have boosted that turn. So in an ideal hand, you keep a 0 cost boost, you send that first, and then you spark. If it's early game, you might probably spark just for a processor. If you already have a processor out and you have enough damage in your hand, if you can send maybe 3 attacks, you just find a boom grenade. Or if you're looking to set up a Max V, if you have the boost cards in hand, the resources, you can always find a backup protocol. Or if it's turn 0 and you just don't need to boost, like you don't want to boost, maybe there's an item off the top that you've already played, then you can just spark for a Teklo core. Or if you're in a fatigue matchup, having an early spark for a Teklo Pounder is very strong as well. So this card is super flexible, and finding the right target at the right time against the right opponent is very difficult. But if you get it right and you maximize the value of this, not only do you get, say, 4 value of a boom grenade, but you also draw a card, which then can be your resource card. It can be an extra attack to push through the boom grenade. So it's worth, I think, upwards of 7 value just by playing 1 card. And if we're talking about Max V, I mean, this is more straightforward, right? So if you see a Max V off the top and your opponent has ceded tempo, he's trying to fatigue you, which is what usually happens in a lot of games, then you can just decide to leave it on top. Hopefully you arsenal something like a 0 cost boost card. Anything will do, like a yellow 0 to 60, a blue T-bone, any 0 cost boost card, and then you draw this up for your next turn. It's difficult-ish to get off in this deck because you usually need some sort of setup like a Teklo core out or a Cerebellum processor out in order to get enough resources to play out a Max V. Because it's not always going to happen that you have 3 0 cost boosts and a Max V, and even then you still need 2 resources. So that's a 4 card hand. With Teklo core out, you could play that hand. Most often, you will probably need a 5 card hand to play out a Max V, or you need Teklo core or Cerebellum or both in order to get resources or get an extra card to get off the Max V. But of course, it's a 2 for 10, helps you push through your boom grenades. Okay, but those are the non-boost cards. That's the items and the power cards. Everything else here, these are just boost cards. And this is one reason why I actually think that the Dash.io deck is very consistent. People think that maybe it's not, it's less consistent because you're boosting away cards and you can't really control it. But the thing is that you have 15 items, you have 6 non-boost cards in the main 60. So 21 cards are just things you are looking for in the deck. Everything else, these 39 cards, essentially say the same thing, which is boost. Just go again, and it helps you filter the top deck. So all of these, we have Expedite, 3 of Expedite. We have 3 Fast and Furious, which are also signed by Sam Young. He did the art with this Dash.io in the Dash.io Armory deck. 060 red, T-Bone red, 060 yellow, T-Bone blue, 060 blue. Okay, kind of confusing. So basically rainbow 0 to 60, and then red and blue T-Bones. So these are all the 0 costs. You have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21 0 costs. And the 1 cost, I'm playing red outpace, pulse wave harpoon, zipper hit, zipper hit, zipper hit. And then the only 2 cost boost card is heist. Very difficult to find these RF heists, by the way, it took me a while. But this is one of the most powerful on hits in the deck, right? So we have, of course, things like damage, which is boom grenade, but legit on hits, we have heist, we have expedite, and then for extra disruption, we have pulse wave harpoon. So these 2 cards, pulse wave harpoon and heist, are probably the best tools against aggro decks or racers. Even in well, heist is just generally good because it presents an on hit every time you have an item in the banished zone. But pulse wave harpoon forces people to block, and if they don't play around it, you can take away their pitch card, you can take away Syndra's starter, you can take away Auxilio's Gone in a Flash. There's just so many things pulse wave harpoon just destroys their opponent's hand. And heist, if let's say the opponent has been blocking out a boom grenade early on, right, giving you 1 card plus armor plus another card and then a 3rd card, and you end the turn with a heist and they don't have enough blocking power to block this out, and you have anything in the banish zone, could be a backup protocol, you get that back, you crank it, you shoot the gun again, could be a boom grenade, you get that back, you don't crank it, you set it up for next turn, but it saves you an action point because you don't have to crank it, but you still have go again from the heist, so you can shoot the symbiosis shot with the counter that the item gave your symbiosis shot. And of course, setting up a Teclocore or Cerebellum processor from a heist is just amazing. It's just so much value. You get 5 damage, you get 4 extra resources, or you get 2 extra cards from Cerebellum, plus the damage from symbiosis shot. It's just amazing. I think that's a good reason why you should just play 3 heists, as well as when you're playing the deck in general, don't be afraid to boost items off the top of your deck. If let's say you've already played an item off, you see another one, I mean, you don't have much choice, right? You just boost it away because it turns on your heist. But speaking of, when it comes to actually playing this deck, as you can tell, it's a very Max V focused deck. I do want to shout out Ian Zhang. Ian Zhang is the Netherlands Nationals winner, and that's basically where I got this deck list from. I think a notable thing is that there are no throttles in this main 60. You don't see blue throttles, you don't see red throttles, and I think that really helps to declunk the deck. It makes the deck really smooth, it makes Max V more consistent and easier to pull off. Even though blue throttle is a breakpoint, it comes in for 4, it costs 2. And usually, because you're only running 15 blues, right? Here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 15 blues, you have 12 yellows, which are your zeros, zipper, spark, and boom, of which most of the time you don't want to pitch spark, but you are okay to pitch the other yellows. So you kind of have 24 pitch cards in the deck, and at the same time you're sparking out all your blue items like Cerebellum and Core, and that's going to reduce the number of blues you're going to draw as well. So you don't want to have a lot of 2-cost cards, It's much easier to just have 0 cost and 1 cost and try to set up this max V or push through boom grenades by going wide. But yes, coming back to playing items off the top, usually when you see an item off the top, your first instinct is to just play it off the top. But there are instances, for example, if you already have a Cerebellum out. Having one Cerebellum out is great. Having a second one is actually not very good. And having a third one is just bad. Like, I don't think you ever want to have 3 Cerebellums on the field. So the reason is because without high octane being banned, you don't really have access to a lot of extra action points. So if you have one Cerebellum out, it has maybe 1 counter on it, and you see a second one, you can crank it and then use that action point to maybe draw off the first one. And then if you really want to use the second one, if you have the shoes, you can crack the shoes to get the action point that way. But that's that's one time, like a one-time use of 2 Cerebellums. There are other ways to get action points. For example, if your expedite hits or your heist hits and you get a item in from your hand or from the banish zone, you crank it, that does get you an extra action point. But honestly, I think that is quite rare. And most of the time, you just don't need to draw so many cards with Cerebellum. Having one and just drawing 2 or 3 times is good enough. So if it were me and I have a Cerebellum on board, what I would rather do is try and set up something like a boom grenade or something like a Teclocore off the top of my deck. I don't mind boosting away the second Cerebellum. And the same thing goes for like a Teclocore. If you already have a Teclocore out, there's really not much point in having 2. There are instances where it's really useful, like I've had 2 cores out and then I find a backup off the top and I send 2 max Vs. But most of the time, 1 Teclocore is great. Like I said, the deck usually functions off of 2 resources. You can still send a bunch of damage. And another thing is that sometimes drawing backup protocols early on or seeing them off the top early on is not that good because you don't have great targets in the graveyard. So you're looking for your 0 cost usually. If you're trying to get a backup, you want the 0 to 60 or Fast and Furious or Heist or Max V or Pulse Wave Harpoon. Those are ranked in order of kind of what you want to get back with backup protocol. Going Heist and then backup protocol into a Heist again is quite strong. But if you don't have those things early on, it's okay to just boost away a backup protocol. Or it's okay to pitch the backup protocol away early so that you can spark it off later. So if you see this in your hand early on, you have no targets, there's honestly no reason to play it out. You're just kind of wasting the value. So I'd much rather, if you see this early on, you try and pitch it away. You can even save it in your arsenal and then crown it away on a future turn. I do like that play as well. I don't particularly like putting valuable attacks into my arsenal if I can really help it, because you're facing things like Slippy, you're facing things like Ira, even Gravy. There's a lot of arsenal disruption. So most of the time, if I do have to arsenal, I would choose to arsenal like a dinky 0 cost boost card, like 060, yellow or blue or T-Bone. Unless I really know that I have tempo and I can afford to set up a turn, then I will choose to arsenal the Max V or the Spark, something like that. Okay, so before we talk about the sideboard, I do want to go through some individual choices here. So I think I made some changes from Ian Tsang's list. I'm not sure actually, I just played a lot of the deck. But I do think for this meta, Expedite is really quite good, especially into Gravy, but also into just aggressive mirrors, like into Dash.io mirrors, into Syndra, all those aggressive decks that don't want to block. You can get a lot of value out of Expedite. You boost it, and then because they let it hit, you put in a Teclocore, you put in a Cerebellum, and then you can crank it, get the action point. So Expedite is just a really cute 0 cost card that can get a lot of value. Fast and Furious, I think, is straightforward. You want to boost it or you want to play it, both are good. 0 to 60 is fine. T-Bone is something that I've seen people not play. I do think it's very useful, and I'll talk about it a bit in my sideboard because I'm playing yellows as well. But you can play a kind of more T-Bone focused game where you're trying to snipe certain equipments. Maybe you can bait out some of their equipment block with boom grenades, and they're trying to block breakpoints, and then you finish off by sending a T-bone to snipe their last equipment, like a flick knives or mask of momentum. Yep, so 060 T-bone, 060 outpace, I think it's another choice. It's pretty decent because you stop them from using their armor to block breakpoints. You also stop annoying equipment like face purgatory, like stalagmite, that kind of stuff. But overall, I think it's just to force them to drop 2 cards when you're threatening a boom grenade. But at the same time, I think it can be a bit of a trap for your opponent, because I think the good opponents playing into DO, if they see that you kept like a 4 or 5 card hand and you send an outpace with a boom grenade out, if they can't block it out efficiently with a boom grenade, it's usually better to just put a 3 block in front of this, take the 1 and take the boom grenade. Don't waste value from blocking if you can't block it out anyway. Pulse Wave Harpoon, I think, is a must play. Like I said already, good disruption, and the zipper hits are just really good value. One choice that you can make, I think, is taking out blue zipper hits. These are probably the worst cards in the deck. It's a 1 for 3, and yeah, so there might be a way to split this into maybe 1 throttle, or I've seen people playing blue outpace as well. So those are other options that you can do with this list. Alright, but let's move on to the sideboard that I brought for PTSG. And of course, this was actually tagged quite hard for Syndra, first of all, and then Slippy and Gravy. So I expected to face a lot of those 3 decks in particular. And let's first of all start with this yellow T-bones, which I think is probably the worst card in the deck. But what happened is that I was trying to find boost cards, because sometimes when I fat deck, I just want more boost cards for Hanabi Blaster. I don't want to play so many items when I'm trying to chain 3 boost cards together. So first of all, boost card. Second, some extra disruption for aggressive mirrors. And one thing that I was finding is that if you play, like I said, a T-bone focus matchup, and you're trying to snipe equipments, people will just try and block breakpoints with their armor, and then they leave something like their flick knives or their mask of momentum quite vulnerable. So if you can chain 2 T-bones after that, it's really quite good. And I tested it at the armory. I managed to snipe like 2 flick knives, one from Arachne and another one from a Syndra. So yeah, I thought it was good. I only played 1 Syndra the whole Pro Tour, so it didn't come in at all. I lost that game as well, so I didn't see it, and I just died. I also didn't play any Slippies, so I think that's something I want to mention, because I think Slippy is a very bad matchup. And against Slippy, my plan is kind of to fat deck a bit. I usually bring in something like this, so you have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 extra cards. And yeah, so I didn't face any Slippies. But Dissolving Shield is another card that comes in for Syndra and Slippy, because just playing this and having it on board prevents them from being able to flick, so they can't continue the Mask of Momentum chain, or they can't mark you by flicking Hunter's Clave. This is a card from Brian Kong of One Collectibles, our Singapore Nets finalist. Also didn't come in handy. It came out against my game against Syndra, but I still lost that game. So yeah, I'll talk about changes to the sideboard after this. And then TikTok Clock, shout out to Jacob, a guy I met while standing in line with waiting for Sam Young. And he actually traded this signed TikTok Clock with me, because I didn't have time to go to MJ's booth to get mine signed. So very nice guy, and TikTok Clock, just amazing art. This is RF signed by the artist. This comes in the mirror, of course, but I also played against Kano and Gravy. I think once Kano sees this and they have potions on board, they just have to go off. And against Gravy, getting their gold destroyed is actually quite a big setback for them, because then they can't filter their hands. And of course, against Dio, I think once they have set up cerebellums or cores on board and you threaten to blow it up, you just get all the tempo if they block out, or you just get so much value if they let it hit. Now, 2 null time zones. I love that these are in cold foil. This is amazing. I think 2 is just the right number. It comes in against Auxilio. It's great. You name either Blast to Oblivion or you name Gone in a Flash. I also played it into the Earth heroes like Verdance. You can name Rootbound Carapace and they can't block with that from hand. They can't pitch them away as well. Or if you think they're setting up like a Felling in the late game, you can just name Felling. But it's most efficient when you're playing it against decks with multiple copies of the same card. So like Gravy, you name Golden Tipple, which is basically the engine of their deck. And then they can't play them, they can't pitch them. So it's basically a dead card in their hand. They can play from Arsenal though. And in the mirror, like you saw, my deck has 9 zipper hits, 9 0 to 60s. So you can bring this in against the mirror as well. You just call whichever one they've played fewer of. And it sometimes stops them quite hard. I also played 3 Twin Drives, once again, because I do have Hanabi Blaster in my sideboard. I like having a bigger density of boost cards. I don't want to bring in so many items. So having these boost cards just help me get Hanabi Blaster and get Max V off more consistently. And I also just love the art. Like I said, I really like the RF mech cards, and this is probably my favorite art. And I just want an excuse to play them. And finally, I played 2 Teclo Pounders. I actually don't like running 3 Teclo Pounders. I don't think there's a lot of games where you just want so many Pounders now. Maybe like something like Yowl or Slippy. Maybe that's why I keep losing to Slippy, because I don't have enough Pounders. But I find having 2 is great. And I like just fat decking with, let's say you have 5 boost cards and then you take 2 or 3 items. So you have a good ratios of blues and reds and then boost cards to item cards. You're not messing up the ratio too much in that sense. So that's how I sideboard. Usually if I fat deck, I am just bringing in items with boost cards. If it's Syndra, I do just take out like the yellow 0 to 60s and a backup protocol. So in the aggro matches, you don't really need backup protocols. Maybe like you probably want at least 2, but you usually don't need 3. And if you're playing TikTok Clock, you can either take out a red boom grenade. If it's Gravy, you don't really have to take out. Into Gravy, you can just fat deck a bit. You can honestly play all of this into Gravy. I think that's fine. It's a few more items, but you can also cut a pounder. Or if you're starting first, you play 2 pounders and try and find it early. And into Verdance, it's also quite similar. You can just play all of these cards. Into Slippy, I do think you just want to run more cards. You can just throw all of these in. Maybe not the null time zones, although naming something like Persuasive or Bonds is pretty decent into them. But having no blocks is also quite bad. So yes, that was my sideboard plan going into Pro Tour Singapore. And I think it went pretty well. The only 2 games I lost were to a Prism as well as a Syndra at the very end. But now I do want to talk about changes. And the first one is an equipment. I think heavy gear industry, probably for Clockwork's Tinkerings, is actually quite a good change. And a shout out to Sin Cheng Ho, another DO player that I was following throughout the Pro Tour. The second best DO player with the same record as me, 7-2 in all the CC rounds at Pro Tour Singapore. So he was playing this, and the thing is that he actually faced 4 Slippies and he beat 3 of them. So I do think that his list has something going on that I need to follow. But yeah, heavy industry gear shift, just a battle worn 1. And the thing is that you can banish the top 2 cards of your deck to get action points, but that also helps you to change the top of your deck one more time, either to dig for an item or dig for a better card to draw. The difference is that if you're playing this as compared to Achilles Accelerator, you usually want to crack heavy industry at the start of your turn while you have a Cerebellum out, or even 2 Cerebellums out, just to get the action point first. Whereas for Achilles, you have to boost first, so well, in either case, you can't just draw the top card of your deck. So obviously, most likely, it's not an item if you're doing that, because if it's an item, you usually just play it off the top and crank it to get the action point that way. But yeah, so that's the difference. Achilles is like you boost, 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 you see a card you want to draw, you draw with your cerebellum, and then you crack the shoes to get the action point. Whereas with the gear shift, you have the cerebellums on board, you want to dig through for a better card to draw, so you activate this, you find a better card to draw, get the action point that way. But of course, this is one block, which is relevant. Next is also like the 3 copies of Sprocket Rocket. I think Sprocket Rocket just coming in as a pseudo 0 for 4 is pretty good, and I like the fact that it has synergy with Heist. So I am trying this out, taking out a variation of outpaces and expedites for these Sprocket Rockets. And then there's also the Pounder, Red Throttles, and BIOS update that I'm looking at. So I do think that if you're running 3 Pounders, you should try and play at least 2 BIOS updates, which is what Sing Cheng's list, I believe, is doing, trying to just cheat out the Tackle Pounders or any item with BIOS update. Because unlike your Boom Grenades and your other boost cards, BIOS update is just 3 damage. You don't have to boost a card to get 3 damage. And you also pump up your attacks to make them bigger to push through the Boom Grenades. And of course, the upside of getting items off the top is just ridiculous. And throttles, I am once again considering 2 off, simply because I lost to a Prism. It's either 2 throttles or 2 twin drives for me. I don't think running 3 twin drives is correct. But yes, finally, there's also Misfire Dampener that I do think you can bring in if you're expecting a lot of Kano. So it also has 1 Blade Break, so there might be other considerations for how you run this equipment. But yes, just having Spell Void 1, because you can prevent 1 arcane damage, or if you've boosted, you can prevent 2, I think just kind of solidifies the Kano matchup. Because even with AB3, sometimes you can still get like sky rolled and just get exploded by Kanos anyway. Alright, and finally, as part of Collectors Week, this is one of my favorite playmats. This is Cerebellum Processor, signed by Marius Ganzel at Pro Tour London. And I really like this playmat, I really like this art, I really like this card. So that's it. Thank you for watching, and leave a comment down below, let me know what you think. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.